A is for Alcoholic is a program about recovery. My name is John and I'm an alcoholic.
And my name is Jerry and I'm an alcoholic.
Join us as we go through the alphabet of alcoholism one letter at a time. Hello everybody. Welcome back to the big show. A quick shout out to all our Patreon supporters. We appreciate you. We are grateful and happy. If you want to become a part of the Patreon crew, go to patreon.com/AIFA. That's patreon.com/AIFA. Every little bit helps get us to get the show out to more people on more platforms.
Word.
And if you can't, if you don't, if you won't, we also would appreciate a rate or a review. So 5-star ratings are great. Write a nice little note wherever you listen to your podcasts. Let everybody else know what you think of us. And it helps us get out to more people. And we're here at W. I can't believe it's W already.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's really crazy, man.
We had a few weeks back, we asked some people, we did like a Q&A, and one of the things I asked is if people wanted to hear our drunk stories, wanted to hear our war stories. So W is for war stories. And again, you know, the show's about recovery. It's about hope. It's about gratitude. It's about the things that happen after, you know, you decide to quit drinking. But we thought we would share some of our favorite, our greatest hits, as you called them.
The greatest hits, yeah. The glue that binds us all.
Yeah.
As alcoholics. You know, some of these experiences may be shared, and like preface it with it may, hopefully it's not, but it may be triggering to some. It may not. I mean, I'd be the first to tell you, like, man, trigger warnings, whatever. But now that I have experienced triggers in my life, I'm like, just heads up. You know, we're not going to try to glamorize our drinking stories, but just let you know that we did some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't hike Everest or anything. But,
No. I walked a lot. I spent all my money on cab fare and walked a lot. That's for sure.
Yeah, I did walk a lot too, actually.
So
I got up on a couple roofs.
I've been on a couple of, maybe those same roofs. We used to get,
yes.
When I lived in Eugene with you and both at the other place where I didn't, there used to be a lot of these late night drunk fests. There was hundreds of them. And there were times where another friend of ours, and we would get this typewriter, and there was this sort of whole Bukowski-esque feeling to it, this sort of Hunter S. Thompson, like, let's go adventure into the night, loaded on whiskey and powders and pills, and go to the top. What's that building that has like the zigzag or like the...
I don't know what it's called. I think it's Lane Tower, but it's not Lane Tower. Lane Tower was the other tall one.
Maybe that was
the second tall one. I can't remember what it's called. The zigzag building. I don't remember.
I remember breaking into one of those buildings, climbing up to the roof to go and type supposedly poems. I don't know where any of those rooftop poems are.
Let's be like a few hundred feet off the ground and just write what I'm thinking while the sun rises and some per person is sleeping on the roof, you know, the floor below me. Yeah. Yeah, that was dangerous.
There was a lot
as
of
a 43-year-old dude, I'm like, that was fucking dangerous.
Right?
Yeah, as like a 23-year-old, I was like, I'm gonna live forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
There was just a lot of this sort of adventuristic idea, which I don't feel like there was any real adventure. You know, it was the difference.
No.
You know, you talk about being brave and this sort of idea of being that machismo and that bravado and that false bravery, and it's more reckless than it is brave.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, it was incredibly reckless. You know, it's funny because I try to think back on it with fondness, and there are some parts of it in the beginning, in the gestation period of my alcoholism that I look back on fondly, or maybe there was this sense of freedom. But now that I think about it more often, it's more that I was younger and wasn't tied down by a lot of things. I don't feel tied down now necessarily. It's just I didn't have as many responsibilities or other people to consider. It was a very self-centered life, but it wasn't the alcohol that made those nights fun. I just thought it was the alcohol that made those nights fun.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, there was some wildness, and I don't know if I would have been as wild or had the inhibitions dropped if I were sober, but I'd probably have like way better credit and and a way better disposition and like better coping mechanisms and shit if there weren't so much alcohol.
All the positive things, yeah.
Most yeah, like all the positive things, most definitely they would be there, but. Yeah, it's just one of those things, man.
What I would like to say is you have some experience with being on a roof on a second story and not making it down so easily.
Oh yeah, that was the first time I went to the hospital because of my alcoholism. When I broke my leg, I compound fractured my right leg. I was in my living room drinking whiskey with some guys from work, and we were shooting each other in the house with pellet guns, airsoft guns, which was a great idea at that period in time. I was like 28, and we were all shooting each other with pellet guns, and someone shot me in the temple right near my eye, and I got really pissed off, and I was like, you could have put my fucking eye out. That's my bread and butter. And the guy like ran out the front door, and I lived in a townhouse, so I went up to the second story to do something, and I saw him run by because he was still running, and I saw him run by in the sidewalk below, and I just kicked the screen out of the window and jumped, and I landed like a drunk person and spiral fracture, compound fractured my right leg, and I had to call an ambulance. One of our friends I fell right in front of the living room window. You remember that old townhouse, and the living room window looked out onto the street, and I fell on the sidewalk in front of the street, and my roommate said I hit the ground so hard the whole house shook. And then we had the windows open because it was like early September. It was still hot. And he says he remembers me calling through the window, dude, I broke my fucking leg. Like, I didn't say I think I broke. He was like, that was the distinction. It was, you didn't say I think I broke my leg. You were like absolute. And I was like, yeah, I could see like the top of my foot. Like my foot was at the wrong angle. Like I could see my shoe from a different angle than it was meant to be seen. So they all come filing out of the house, and like one of my friends turned bright green, and like I thought he was gonna faint, and I was, from my job I see people faint, so I'm like, this dude's gonna. I'm like, go inside and sit down, and then I look at my roommate and I'm like, bring me the phone, the one phone I haven't smashed yet in an alcoholic haze, and I called my own ambulance, and it was a busy two-way street. It was the Gut in Eugene. If anybody lives in Eugene, you know the Gut. It's Willamette Street. And that's like the main road that goes from like South Eugene all the way into downtown. And it's just a 2-lane road right there. And it was in front of the old baseball stadium, there was a baseball game that night. So traffic was completely full, and the ambulance stopped traffic on both lanes to come up to my sidewalk and come get me because it was elevated above the street. And man, there were like hundreds of people in cars just waiting for them to fucking put a cast, like an air cast on me and take me down in a gurney. It was pretty crazy, man. I walked with a limp for about a year and a half. I have a rod in my right leg. And that was the first time I went to the hospital because I was drinking, because of my actions while I was drinking, right? And even then, that shit didn't sober me up. I quit drinking that period of time for 10 weeks. But that's because I was taking Percocet instead of drinking. So there was like no healthy... It wasn't like, and I remember being really proud of myself, like, man, I haven't had a drink in 10 weeks, but I was chewing up like 2 Percocets at a time every like a couple of hours, you know? So I was like, just, being an addict, being an alcoholic, like replacing one thing for another, And then the first time I had a drink after that in 10 weeks, which should have been a red flag, but that first night I actually decided to drink after my hiatus. I took that first sip, and I was sitting at a table with my ex-girlfriend having dinner, and I just started crying. I just started fucking crying, and she's like, are you serious? And I'm like, I missed you. Like, looking at the booze, like, I missed you. Like, the mindset in that is crazy. Yeah. I missed it. Yeah, I missed it, absolutely. And then that started to tear again. I mean, that one sip led down that pattern.
That was what, like 2002 or something?
That was 2003.
2003, yeah.
Yeah. You didn't break anything.
I haven't broken anything. I've sprained some things. I get what I was thinking about this particular topic and doing stupid drunk things. I used to live with somebody who had an Adderall problem as well. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
I remember when they were gone on vacation and I was drunk out of my mind in this apartment and I was thinking, I just need some Adderall so that I can continue to drink. And I have this very vivid memory of kind of going through all of his stuff in his room and just digging
really?
through it because he's gone. Now if he had any Adderall, he probably took it with him where he was like gone for a few days to go see family or friends or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm running around and I'm like, where the fuck would I be if I was an Adderall pill? And so I'm like turning his room upside down and like digging through shit. And I go and he had one of those closets that's on track, so it's on rollers. And so I move the out of the way and I start digging around in the little track where the doors, and I found one. I found a little pink pill
in the track,
in the closet track. And I was like, that's where, because where would it fall? This is how I was like, I had to have the drug. I was like, where would I fall if I was an Adderall? I'm like checking, the cracks between the wall and where the carpet digs in.
Oh my God.
And so I found one. And I used that apartment too. I mean, you came that one summer and you came up for a visit and we just used to listen to loud ass music. This is
in Nickerson.
This is the place in Nickerson. And just drink and drink and drink
Seattle.
and jump into the river. Did you jump in the river or was that just me?
No, you jumped in the river, and actually, the deeper you're getting, you were naming different philosophers. You were like, man, I'm deep like Sartre or whatever, and then you'd get deeper, and you're like, oh man, it's a little Nietzsche in here, and then you would get like deeper, and you said some other, you're like, oh man, it's too Kierkegaard, I gotta get out of here, and man, that water was cold. Mm-hmm. That also was dangerous. I was like, damn, you could have drowned. Yeah, but back to you being the fucking Sherlock Holmes of Adderall. You were like Robert Downey Jr., like in slow motion, figuring out like where homeboy would drop an Adderall if he was being,
not even
careless.
Where he hid it. I wasn't even looking.
No, where he would drop it.
Where he would drop it. If I was
That's
just like,
great.
I need to fucking find one. And that wasn't the only time that we did a bunch of Adderall and drank a bunch in that apartment either.
No,
but
we constantly did. I mean, there were
friends of ours, and I don't know if you were there for that night, but I know that there were people that I worked with, and I worked at a coffee shop, and we were all up drinking, and we all had to work the next morning. Some of us at 5 a.m, some of us at 10, but still, it was in the morning. I'm only like 23 at this point or something, and I just remember like being up and drinking, and we're praying for snow because it's supposed to be snow. And what happens in Seattle when it snows, it doesn't snow enough to like really stick too hard, but the entire city, which is on all these hills, becomes slushy, and cars can't drive up and down the hills. Nobody's prepared for this. It's not like the East Coast where they salt everything and everyone's got chains.
You're just fucked, right?
So nobody goes anywhere. And lo and behold, it snowed enough that nobody had to go to work the next day. And I don't remember who I was with. Maybe I was driving, and at 6 a.m. to go get another bottle of tequila to continue this
I'm just
warpath.
Stoked you found the one liquor store in Seattle that opened at 6 a.m. The entire city of Seattle was like over 1 million and some people. There were 5 fucking liquor stores, man. I remember that.
Maybe it wasn't like 6. It might have been 9. I don't know. It was early. But
it was just the witching hour, whatever hour it was, man. Yeah.
But yeah, that apartment was definitely witness to a lot of things. I don't know.
I can't even imagine. You didn't even get that security deposit back?
No, that same apartment that I think you were there. Another friend of ours. I don't know why I was trying to get a hold of him or something, but he locked himself in the bathroom.
Yes. No, because you were fighting and you were going to kill him.
Okay,
you were like, I don't know if you're literally going to kill him, but you're like, I'm going to fucking kill you. And he ran in the bathroom and locked the door. So I wasn't there. I came up 2 days after that. So
I opened the hall closet, and there's all these street signs that we had stolen off the street, because that's what people do, right? When you're drunk.
Right, yeah. Of course. Seems normal. Yeah.
So I grab one that was like, I think it was like a handicap parking sign, and I start beating the door in, yelling at him, because I think now like something's wrong, and I want to.
Right.
I'm gonna
like
help
he's
him.
Done something. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember my mindset, except I have to get into this door. So I knocked the door off the hinges, and he had crawled through the bathroom window, which was super tiny, and on the second story, and somehow made it down. And so
Right.
then for months afterwards, we had a door that you just, when you went in to use the bathroom, had to just sort of rest in the doorway.
You had to pick it up and
Yes.
scoot it over. Yeah.
And that
Yes, I
was
remember.
manageable. That was just the
Manageable.
norm. That was not normal, but that was just how we lived. Like there was a
Right.
lot of these things with like
Oh yeah, I mean, oh dude, yeah. I remember living in some of those places with you, and we just, yeah. And yeah, I guess you could write it off like, oh yeah, dudes being in their 20s, but I mean, a lot of it was in our 30s.
and dudes in their 20s are not all like this. Dudes in their
No,
20s
they're not. They're not.
are, going to college and going to graduate school and, getting jobs and learning trades and doing things that are constructive and positive.
Setting up the prologue for the success that is their life. Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Right?
So
yeah.
the
If you
prologue,
could see the sarcasm in my face out there.
it's hard because I don't want to regret these things. And there are moments where, I don't know how the whole idea, we will not look back on the past, or we will not be afraid of it, or be ashamed of it.
We'll not be afraid of it. And like, honestly, I could sit here, I could fill hours of this podcast with sad stories, and I could absolutely tell them. I mean, I part of me revels in them because I'm a weird person, but there was so much misery, but then there were also these strange things where I look back and it was just really weird. It was just weird's the wrong word. I just lost the word right now, but just to look back and be like, wow, that's how we lived. Was it disgusting? Yeah, but it was manageable, I guess, at that period of time. At least that, you can, like I said in an earlier podcast, you tolerate so much over time, it just becomes normal.
Well, and again, that idea of living on the fray, on the fringe, was somehow strengthening. It was somehow like, it was, you had strength. You had to do it. You had, what's the word I'm looking for?
Grit.
You had grit. Yeah. And now I look back and I'm like, fuck, dude, I just want to be comfortable now. I'm doing everything in my power so that I can be comfortable and clean, and, like, do the dishes after I'm done cooking the meal, and even maybe sweep the kitchen floor.
Right. You know how I feel about that period of my life, all of it, but mostly with you guys and my previous friends in Tucson too, that I did graffiti with, was I always felt like an outsider. And that's a sentiment I hear constantly within the recovery community when we talk about our stories. And so I would always gravitate towards other outsiders. And I always found solace in other outsiders. And it just happened to be that those other outsiders were also drinkers, because that's like that common thread. I hear it constantly. You always felt different or other than or less than. So when I was with you guys, I always felt solace because I found my big group of people who were living outside of what we were normally supposed to be doing. And I loved it. I loved that feeling back then. I mean, now I don't mind being out. Now being alienated and outside is kind of uncomfortable for me. I'm not that I want to fit in or conform or be part of the status quo. It's just, I roll up to my kid's school looking, covered in tattoos, and in Eugene, that's not rare. That's like the norm. But in the school she goes to, I'm like, tattoo dad, like, and it makes me feel a little bit like a sore thumb, like I don't regret it, but it's definitely one of those things where sometimes I do want to fade into the wallpaper just to be like an inside agent, like, hey, I'm subversive. I just don't want to wear it on my sleeve anymore,
Yeah, And I think at the time when these things were going on, when I met you and when you came back and we started like really hanging out, that like couple of years later, there was a source of pride in that. One, ours was the house that everybody came to party at. And it was just because we didn't care, and we tolerated the filth, and we tolerated large groups of people just coming over, and like and I think there was a certain level of wanting to be, if I think about that, a certain level of wanting to be accepted by people, accepted by peers, and like you say, I found my people, man. I don't sure I'm on the outside, but I've got people I can be on the outside with.
This is, and what's funny is it mirrors itself now within my recovery. Is that I sit in this room full of outsiders, but we're all actually trying to, improve ourselves, improve our lives, instead of just wallow in the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, and it's It is, and it definitely correlates to what goes on in my recovery now, and the people that I talk to, and the things that we talk about, and we laugh and we joke and we talk about, like waiting until 6 a.m. till the store opens to go buy more booze. We talk about all the dumb stuff, all the silly stuff that, what were some of the other ones that I did? My run-ins with the cops were very few and far between, but some of them I would instigate.
Right.
Like I remember the cops had pulled some dude over down the street from my apartment, and I was drunk as fuck, and I was walking home from somewhere, and I get up and I was like, I'm drunk, but I'm bored, so I'm gonna go see what the cops are doing.
How you guys doing tonight, officer?
So I walked down there.
How's your evening?
And then all of a sudden, the cops got me up against the wall, like, "Hey, man, what are you doing here? Why are you getting involved in this? Where do you live? Let me see your ID." And I was like, "No, I just live up here. I'm just going home." And I was like, I don't know what the fuck I was thinking. Like, what was this madness where I just wanted to, that sort of feeling of I want to be where it's exciting. I want to be.
Yes. Yeah, I would say that during our drinking years, that was definitely my descriptor of you. Is I'm like, John's looking for something. He wants every night to be this big adventure and this big experience and this exciting, thrilling ride. And I'm just sitting here trying to get my drunk on. He's fucking up my drunk right now.
And I was the one.
It's like so fucking mad at you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, can't we just drink ourselves to fucking sleep? Or what? This has to be a whole goddamn adventures and babysitting fucking night. Like, all right, fine. I guess I'm going to go to the place with the deep fried avocado. Like,
right. I know. There was plenty of those nights. That was a thing too. And I was like, I really loved hanging out with you because we had very similar taste in music and movies and all those things. And, about the same age. So that helps too. But I was like, the cool to me, I'm friends with the cool tattoo dude. Right. So that was my thing.
Yeah, right.
So, right. No, but that was part of it. That was all part of the cachet, for me at least. And I remember those nights like rolling around in my fucking car and going to the coffee shop that I worked at 6 a.m. to go harass the morning girl that was working there. And fucking, so still drunk all night. And finally come home, and I still don't want to go to bed. Like, I had so much energy, and alcohol gave me so much energy. And I remember at one point, like, trying to fucking go and, like, wake you back up or something, and you had a knife under the pillow. It was like it was like some old-ass fucking hunting knife that I got.
It was like a dull Bowie knife.
Yeah.
Or Bowie
and
knife.
And you're like, just let me fucking sleep. And it was just definitely this thing where I'm just, like, trying not to... I didn't want the party to end. I always wanted, and I think eventually, like, my body just refused, to party.
You're just gonna ride it till the wheels fell off, and then the wheels done fell off,
and I was dragging it behind me.
Wheels, wheels done fell off, dude.
So
lots of them. The way I drank too is I never threw up. I only got cut off once from a bar. I was like, when I was in a bar, I was pretty reserved because I wanted to continue drinking. So if I kept to myself, I would try not to be an outburst. And the one time I got cut off at a bar, I was up in South Eugene and I was going to the bathroom, and the bathroom was near the fire exit. And the way if you swung open the bathroom door hard enough, it would hit the fire exit door and open it up and set off the fire alarm. So I walked up to the bathroom door and I whipped it open, and it hit the back door, and the door opened and the fire alarm went off in the bar, and I just went into the bathroom and peed. And when I came out, the bartender was standing there and he's like, "You got to fucking go." I was so drunk, I was oblivious that I'd set off the fire alarm. And I'm like, "Well, why do I got to go?" And he's like, "Well, first thing, dude, you set off the fucking fire alarm. And second thing, you've been in the women's restroom for like longer than 5 minutes." So I had walked into the women's bathroom. And like swung the door open, and so like they cut me off there, and that was that was the only time I can remember being cut off. I've been denied entrance to lots of bars, but once I got in there,
right, you were polite, you were reserved.
I was polite and reserved. That was at the beginning. By the end, I just drank in my house. No one was gonna cut me off in my house.
Me too.
I mean, not even my wife. She would just be like, "Well, I guess you're gonna fucking pass out eventually." You're just being in the garage the whole time.
Yeah. It was
painting.
It was it was the same. I was not as reserved in public in bars.
No, you were loud, but that's why I liked hanging out with you, because you could be wild. So if we did get kicked out, it was your fucking fault, not mine.
So I would do, things like,
I
"Sir,
could
can you
remain
please
gold star."
can you please put your shirt back on?" Because I'd get all excited
yeah.
about some swing band that was playing in '98, and the dude was tap dancing on a fucking apple box, and I was like, "Yeah."
1998, you stood on a chair and took your shirt off. Not only did you want everyone to see you, you wanted to make sure they could all see you, so you stood on a chair and took your shirt off.
Yeah. And it was just, so there were numerous occasions. There was one where I tried to jump on a table for last call at a karaoke bar, and I spilled everybody's like last call pitchers and beers.
I was there then too. Yeah, you were singing. No, it was last call. You weren't singing.
I wasn't singing, but I thought
you were always singing.
I thought I could get on top of this table, and I was a little
there.
bit smaller, but I was always a bigger dude. I'm like 6'1", 200 and probably 230 at that point or something like that, 240 maybe. But and I just toppled the whole table, and they were like, I tried to run out there, and they stopped me, and they were like, "No, you go tip the fucking bartender right now. You go give him all your money. I think the door guy or something like that."
Yeah.
And so there was always this sort of like, I gotta be the center of attention. I always regretted it and felt horrible about it, but I always wanted there to be like that action and adventure, and it was, and even when it's funny because then I started bartending on the regular, like when it became my full-time profession, and I would have to deal with people like me, and I would have to, it was like this sort of, it was like this level of hell, right? So now all of a sudden, now I was one of those people. Now I'm in a position, I'm still drinking, so I'm still resentful. Now I see these people and I don't like them, and I feel better than them. I think that I'm better than them. But on my days off, or not even wait till my days off, as soon as I started drinking, I would become them. But even like if I went out to bars and you were there with me going up and down the street, and I would just be just as obnoxious. Yeah. And even more so because I felt comfortable in these places. I knew the bartenders, right? So I can get away with shit, and I would do stuff like not tip them. I would forget. I wouldn't do it intentionally. I remember one time I racked up a $75 tab in no time and didn't tip the dude, and had to go back and make that sort of amends. But I never learned it when I was bartending. I never learned that, like, hey, you can't do this, and that comes from having this fucking disease in my brain.
The fact that a $75 tab would be normal. Mm-hmm. Which is normal for like dinner for two people. I mean, I just spent more than that on dinner for me, my wife, and daughter. But then you do it every night. Mm-hmm. I mean, like base price for me to start drinking was like $60 at the bar. That's a lot of money every day, every single fucking day.
Every day.
Or I could just go to the liquor store and buy a $13 bottle of Evan Williams. Mm-hmm. But that was every day too, though. That's like every day that Evan would be gone.
And again, it was always like I wanted to have some sort of, I feel like there was some kind of camaraderie, but I mean, mostly we just kept to ourselves. I didn't really go out to like meet new people. It was just me and my friends. Yeah. And like, hey, let's go somewhere. And let's just go somewhere different and drink.
Right, yeah, fuck new people.
Yeah.
It was always like, fuck the new guy. Who's this fucking guy? Who are you? You're not one of us. But let's go to different bars to fucking make other people feel alienated that they're not part of our cool inner circle, our secret society of fucking
assholes,
alcoholics, like assholes. Yeah.
So
exactly.
it was a lot of that, and so for a decade and plus, I was always this sort of angry, resentful bartender. When I would but then I would become this angry, resentful, slobbering drunk, Right. So it's and again in recovery, it's that same kind of thing that I found was first, it's like, I don't think I belong here, man. I don't know who these people are. I don't know who they think they are, man. Like, but I'm not one of these people. Fuck that. And then you're like, oh man, this is where I belong. This is my crew. This is my.
My experience was different, but relatable. But I remember my early recovery, a lot of self-pity. Mm-hmm. Like I would sit in those rooms and I would be like, this is what I've become. Look at what I've become. Look at all these people. They're at their lowest. Look at what I've become. I'm just in this church basement. It smells like old paper, and I have to drink coffee out of styrofoam. Look how every time, and not to get too much into it, but every time we do the opening prayer, I'd like fucking cry because I'm like, look what I've become, And then after a while, they'd start laughing, and they'd start laughing at weird shit. And then they start laughing at shit that I've done. Like some dude would say what I've done, and then I was like, well, maybe I want to be like these people. Maybe this is good that this is what I've become. And then after a while, I'm like, man, this is what I've become. Like the intonation changes, the attitude changes. But for me, it was a lot of self-pity. You and I were the same and different types of alcoholics, because whereas you were loud and open and flamboyant, which is what drew me to you as a friend, I would go out and I wouldn't act out towards the general public. But if you were in a personal relationship with me, whether we were friends or like in a romantic relationship, I would act out on you. Like that was my big thing during my alcoholism. And probably even in parts of my recovery, is that like I tend to shit all over everybody close to me. Like if you got close to me and it was us, man, like you were definitely the cause of all my fucking problems.
There was a name for it. You know what everybody would say.
What, the robble?
Yes.
Or what was it? Yes. Yeah, I would robble. I would robble on you. Mm-hmm. If I loved you, I would fucking try to hurt you as hard as I could when I was drinking. But if you were a random stranger on the street, I probably wouldn't say shit to you drunk because I'd be afraid that you would kick my fucking face.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's weird because you would like be really big and loud, like a big blooming firework or whatever, like a Katy Perry song, yes. And I was over there like, I don't even know what kind of song I was. It was just a bad one. It was,
Modest Mouse song.
Yeah, not that Fireworks a great song either, but like it was definitely.
But that's one of her songs. It's called Fireworks.
Yeah, Firework.
I
yeah.
didn't know. I thought you were just using that as a descriptor.
Baby, you're a firework. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a kid, man. We get weird, man. We get weird.
Crank up the Katy Perry in the car.
She got into it. Not anymore now. She's into something else. She's into 21 Pilots now.
Right on.
She's kind of emo, I guess. That's what she tells me. Daddy, I think I'm emo. And I'm like, all right. You do you. Just talk to me. All you got to do is just talk to me because your dad's an emo motherfucker. He does a podcast about drinking.
Here's my cure tapes. Here's my old.
Yeah, exactly. You didn't see me in the Smith shirt earlier?
Yeah, man. It was a different time. And it's
right.
It's almost like the things you do while you're drinking, the way you behave, and like you can't get to recovery without that, right? I mean, that's just the way that it goes.
I think you got to walk through that fire.
Mm-hmm.
Like Bukowski said, what matters most is how well we walk through the fire,
mm-hmm.
Or through the flames, I guess it was. But, it's funny thinking about it in these war stories. I've heard worse. I've heard...
Yeah.
And, infinitely worse. Like, I was not an intravenous drug user. I didn't have any problems with any drugs. I was an alcoholic. But I do know the depths of what that intravenous drug user has been feeling internally because I felt them.
Mm-hmm.
I felt them. Like, I can hear the story. I've been to some of those, those rooms as well and heard the stories and been like, I know that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that, Yeah, I fucking party guy in my 20s and punk rock and all that shit. But, whatever it was I was doing. But, like, I know that fire in me. I know what burns in me and I know what compelled me. And I know it's still there. It's just... It's not in the front seat anymore.
No.
It's not even in the back seat.
No, it's like a spare tire in the trunk.
Yeah, it is. That I'm never going to use.
It's a little donut, and it's like, yeah, man, I got a AAA card now. I don't need to fucking mess with you.
But I got to stay, like, recollected. I have to remember, like, you can, like, I always talk about your worst drunk, too,
mm-hmm.
but, like, everything around it. I have to remember that because... It's not just like the collateral damage I've done to everyone around me, but that fucking desperation in my heart, that thing in me that just kept pushing me forward to keep drinking. And I will drink if I die, and I will die if I drink, and I'll die if I don't drink.
Yeah.
That thing in me, I gotta remember that fucking thing.
Mm-hmm.
I can't be afraid of it. I just have to remember that's
part of who I am. And
yeah.
I gotta say too, and I've been kind of stressed out about some things lately, and part of me is always, I had this thought, and I was like, fuck, man, I just don't want to. I don't want to deal with anything, and whether I'm talking about like the financials or just in my personal life. But it was just like, and on top of that, I got to be this fucking alcoholic and have this shit in my head all the time. I was like, man, I'm just tired of it. I had this thought over the last couple of days, and I was just like, fuck, man, can't I just have a drink like a normal person? And it was just funny because it's like, no, I mean, you can't, and that's not the way it's gonna work.
Right.
So
right.
It's fine to have those thoughts. For me, and I kind of, as long as I have that, that internal monologue with myself, or dialogue, I should say, and just remember, like, that's who I was. That's what I did. But I don't have to be that person anymore. And there's a whole nother, like, world of relief in that. Like, oh God, thank God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could you imagine?
That's what you did, but yeah, you don't have to do it again. Could I imagine what?
I don't know.
Man,
waking up in the backyard at the sunrise, hot as fuck, with grass on your face,
covered in ants, because I'm in southern Arizona. Because my wife convinced me that moving back to Arizona was a good idea. Actually, she didn't convince me. I convinced myself of it. Instead of being like, well, yeah. And it wasn't even Arizona that was making me wake up in the backyard. It was that there was booze on every fucking corner, and I'm an alcoholic. I can't imagine it. I can't.
But I can't now. It would not. It doesn't even register. Like, oh, leaving my car downtown because I got too drunk, and I guess I'll just figure out whether or not it was in a towaway zone or not tomorrow.
I don't have to stare at that stain on my ceiling anymore with a fucking migraine. Like, I've never been drunk in this house. I don't know if I probably said it on another podcast, but I've never been drunk in this house I've lived in. And, like, I don't even know what it'd be like to walk this house drunk or to walk this house hungover. I don't know.
I've been
because it has the associated memory. Yeah, you have been drunk in the house, but those were like your last drunks.
Those were my very last ones, and they were pretty rough and pretty raw, and there's some memorable. When I say memorable is usually a positive connotation, but there were some memorable dark moments where it's like, oh God, and remembering those things and knowing that, again, that relief of not having to do it. And
whew, yeah, that's a weight off my ass. I got other weights on my ass anyway. Why have that one extra?
You don't need it.
That's too much shit, dude. Yeah. I've got shit I got to do. That's my new motto in life. I'm like, I've got shit to do. Like, no, I can't do it. I've got shit to do.
Yeah. I think Mishka Shabuli says that was his quote. He was at some speech, and he's like, to kids, and he's like, whatever you want to accomplish in life, alcohol will just get in the way of that.
Yeah.
I always love that idea.
Saying that. Yeah.
And I think about, like, those days, and I think about hangovers too, and I used to joke and talk about the rich tapestry of my hangover, because it would be the ups and the downs and the stomachs and the shits and the headaches and it's I don't have to, those things don't have to exist anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want to say I have control over it, but I have knowledge that, I have knowledge of what I'm capable of on both ends of the spectrum, and I really like the stuff that I'm doing now a lot better.
Your wake is much smaller. There's not this trail of destruction behind either of us anymore. I like the Dan Savage rule on his podcast. He talks about, when having sex with people who are younger than you, not young people, but you know what I mean? Like, if you're, anyway, he says it's like the campsite rule. You got to leave it in better condition than when you found it. And so that's kind of how I feel about life now. My whole life is like a campsite rule. Like, I want to leave the people around me in a better condition than the way I found them. Now, I don't want to go out and help them. I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not out here holding hands, helping everybody, but I want to make sure that at least their experience with me leaves something for them. And a lot of people will tell you that I'm full of shit because I am a hard person to be around a lot of the times. But my heart's in the right place most of the time. Yeah. And I get better every day. So every day I'm like, what can I do? At least to make everybody here win something. Yeah, I think that's a good way to end it. The campfire rule. Yeah, I think so. Campfire rule. Thank you, Dan Savage. I listen to this podcast all the time, dude. Which one's is it? What's it called? This is called Savage Love. If listeners out there, you got sex problems, listen to Savage Love. It's awesome. I love Dan. Leave life better than you found it. Leave life better than you found it, y'all. Thanks again for listening. Our music, as always, is by Neglect. You can find more of his stuff at neglect.bandcamp.com. And you can find us on all social media platforms that matter: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And you can reach us at aisforalcoholic@gmail.com.
Talk to you later.
Yeah.